John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
Well, Da Vinci Code tapped into it a little bit.
Yeah, Da Vinci Code touched on it a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Incidentally, I'm not going to name the company, but there was a company called me and asked me if I would be interested in being a consultant to the motion picture.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get those approaches all the time from Hollywood.
Yeah.
And you were telling, I think at lunch today, you were talking about how you were privileged to go through that very well-known filmmaker's library. And,
I went through Steven Spielberg. I went there and met the lady who was in charge of. This lady is from England. Her husband had just passed away, and I don't know if she's still there. That was quite a few years ago, but it was when Steven Spielberg first opened up his SKG Studios.
DreamWorks right
here.
DreamWorks,
SKG DreamWorks over in Glendale. And I had an opportunity to go there and to meet this lady who was the head of his research department. And so I talked with her, and I was invited to come over and talk with her, which I did. And she was telling me, she said, Stephen is a stickler for making sure things are done right on a movie. So any clothes, any terms, words, symbols, whatever would have been there. That's what he wants. He wants everything to be exactly the way it would have been. The clothes have to be exactly correct.
Well, I think he and Mr. Lucas are phenomenal at research and
incredible,
and the actual, the detail. I mean, if you look at both of their films,
I'm fascinated with what's going on.
Oh yeah, well, Lucas. I mean, he's.
I'm going to tell you something that's out of school, but the one thing I will say, I had lunch with Michael Eisner and George Lucas. And a bunch of other guys like that out at Disney. There was a private party, and I was invited to. And I got pictures of some of them on my website of me with having lunch with Eisner and Lucas. George Lucas said to me when I first met him, he said to me, well, he didn't know me, and so I went and sat down, because the way it worked is that they have food everywhere out there on all the best cooks and all the best food you can imagine. and different areas, all kinds of national foods, and you can pick whatever you want. And then they had all these tables and long chairs, long tables and chairs. So you just get whatever you want to eat and just sit down somewhere. And so I got what I wanted, and I sat down where I didn't realize where I sat down. I'm sitting right next to Michael Eisner, and across from him is George Lucas and Danny DeVito and a couple of other people. I don't know, I just sat down, and here I am right in the middle of them. And so I just, George Lucas introduced himself, and I shook hands with him, and he said, "Your name?" And I said, "Jordan Maxwell." And he said to me, he said, "Oh, you did a book with Steve Allen, didn't you? It was a red color book. And it was called something about the book your church doesn't want you to read." And I said, "Yes, I did." And I said, I'm amazed you know about that." He said, "Well, the only reason I know is because I don't read books. I don't have time to sit and read books. But I pay a lot of people to read books for me." And he said, "But this one particular book my wife liked, and she was very interested in this whole subject of religion and occult theocracy and all that. And so she particularly liked your part in the book, what you were writing about astrotheology. And so she made me sit down and read your part. So that's why I remember your name in the book."
Yeah, and I admire both of those filmmakers, Spielberg and Lucas. I mean, they've touched on a lot of different subjects.
Oh, have they ever?
Over the years that are almost documentaries to a degree. If you
Yeah,
look at the Indiana Jones and even what's going on, with the Star Wars.
And what about this last one, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull?
Oh, the Crystal Skulls. You've had a chance to hold one of them.
Absolutely. I mean, this was back in 1980s.
What was her name? That she found one in one of the Mayan tombs.
Yeah, that was
Canadian.
Annie Mitchell Hedges.
Yeah,
Mitchell Hedges.
Yep.
But Nick, the guy's name is Nick Nocerino. He passed away, and what an incredibly dear, fascinating, interesting, and wonderful man that was. Nick Nocerino. And it's good that you should know that name and look him up. You will not find a more fascinating man than that.
Well, he researched
all this stuff on the crystal skulls.
I think it wasn't IBM. It was
IBM and 3M company.
Yeah, 3M tried to find out, and it was crystal of not this earth.
That's right, not of this.
And I've talked to I've had experience of people that have actually held the
Mitchell Hedges,
the Mitchell Hedges skull.
Yeah,
and they were able to look into the future, look into the past.
Do you know what some of that stuff he was telling? He was telling us that the actual crystal skulls, there's 9 of them that they have today. There's hundreds of crystal skulls in South America, but there were 9
original
really
ones,
life-size real crystal skulls. The rest of them are replicas for sale, but there were 9 crystal skulls found. And the best one, the Vatican has one of the crystal skulls, one of the 9, and the British Museum has one, the Louvre Museum has one, and Annie Mitchell Hedges, who was mentioned, mentioned in the movie, Indiana Jones and Crystal Skull. And his name was mentioned 2 or 3 times, Mitchell Hedges.
Well, she was on a...
She found it.
She actually put her hand in and grabbed it. She was a young child at the time.
Right. She was a little girl, and she was in South America, and the father was an archaeologist, a paleontologist, and he was mulling around in the ruins, and she was too as a kid. And so she said she went over and she saw this little crystal showing from the dirt.
Yeah,
and
the light hit it, and she grabbed it. And
well, she said she cleaned off the dirt and actually saw it was a crystal skull. And she said, so she pulled it out and shows her dad. She found the skull, solid crystal, but it had a skull, and it had crystal jaws.
Well, this colleague of mine who actually held it, he said when he held it, his whole body tingled. And he looked into this thing, and he said he was able to see parts of his past.
That's right.
And he said it looked like part of his future.
That's right.
He said it was it was an experience that he will never forget.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, before I get off, my God, once we get on these subjects, I got so many of them.
As a researcher, don't take people's words from them. And please, don't believe what I tell you. Believe what's in your heart and what's in your mind. That's where real truth is. I've been teaching for 50-something years, and the one thing when people start telling me, please help me do that, no. You take the truth. Everything we tell you, part of it's truth for you, not all of it. The rest goes into the computer. And when it's needed, all of a sudden it pops up and you wonder where the hell it came from. Well, it's been there for a long time. And there's only one person you have to believe in. And that's the person you look at in the mirror when you get up in the morning. Love that person, and your life's going to be a lot easier in this world. Whether you like crystal skulls, whether you like crystals, whether you have generators. Today we have male crystals, we have female crystals, left-handed crystals, right-handed crystals. We have recording crystals, we have memory crystals, we have computer. Hey, a crystal is a crystal. But the biggest crystal of all is sitting in those chairs. Believe me, questions?
Hey, you epic being. Andre Hodge, Infinite Potential Healing, Servant of Truth, with you once more. And as always, I really appreciate you being here and allowing me to be a part of your journey. I hope you're really doing awesome and things are going well. Your progress in your awareness and your pursuit along these lines is going really well. So as always, I'm grateful for you being here. And it's interesting times, as always, alright? So I just had some really massive personal victories in the last couple of weeks. I worked out something really massive, and it's been an issue in the background for a very, very long time. Like, I've been going 17 years hardcore with all this stuff, so I've been involved with a lot of things and working out a lot of concepts out there, and, you know, being in the trenches of the origin of a lot of things. And I'm just going to be a bit elusive on what happened, but I just want to offer it as a marker point of the last week of February 2025 was a really profound culmination of a lot of things and working out what was going on. And in my opinion, I've implemented a solution by working out the context. So as I say, the pattern recognition and context are the hardest thing to acquire, especially in this world and how it's been. But then working out a solution based on that is actually quite simple and elegant. You just got to be willing to contemplate a lot of variables and go where most people aren't willing to consider, to discern and acquire data and pattern recognition and stuff. So yeah, it was a massive, massive thing that I know has been implemented. So I'm not going to say too much more about it right now. It's still a bit raw, and we'll have to see how things play out. But from my perspective, I feel like I'm in literally the best territory I've ever been in. All right? So I know I've gone through a lot of shifts and stuff like that. It's fascinating because sort of things have been coming online the last month. I've had a lot of fun with the animals. I have an appreciation for them and stuff like that, just as a metaphor. And say in the 90s as a kid, I'd go to my mates, and I remember one mate had a cat called Sylvester, and anytime I went around it, just like within 5 seconds it was sitting on my lap, right? And you might be like that, they like to be around you and stuff like that, but I've had some really profound things come online, and it feels like, say for instance, dogs, I've been able to perceive the sciatica, like the nerve issues that they have in their spine and stuff like that. So the dogs just come up to me, and then I just put my hand out, and where do you want padding, and what's the issue? And they just put my hand along their spine where it is, and then I just give them deep tissue sort of stuff. So I've had a lot of, you know, new territory abilities and perceptions come online. Like it was interesting, like I just patting a dog, and like I had all these nerve issues down my back, and it was like, holy cow, I'm feeling the dog, you know. So a lot of the animals out there might be in a lot of pain. I feel I could talk a lot about the animals and stuff like that. They've been holding a lot of space and had some interesting experiences the last couple of months with some allies and stuff like that. But one of my biggest releases I feel that I've ever released was our Intuitive Potential Part 7, which was my last release, all about hydration and dehydration and cognitive functions, right? So I even found a clip overnight about a guy talking about in his studies he found 98% of people are chronically dehydrated, right? So those of you that really invested in my stuff and went through that and you've implemented it in these last couple of weeks, it might be interesting of what you pick up with this and how much your ability to contemplate variables and acquire data to form your own patterns sort of stuff. As always, I have my own opinions and perspectives, and once I get them, it's just obvious, right? But again, with this content, which will be Crystal Skulls Part 2, right? It's been around a year since I released the last one, and I was going to release at least four, and I haven't got around to it because everything has been so on, and the discoveries we've made since last year has been profound. And I'll get into that a bit and stuff, but I feel like it's a really good potent marker point to say me and my journey of what I've worked out and stuff like that, to be able to come back to this theme and offer it in a bit more rounded way, right, for many variables and stuff. So I'm not sure what I'm going to call it, but Crystal Skulls Part 2, Nick Nocerino, the godfather of Crystal Skulls, and context for the greater picture sort of thing. But just getting back to that last release, it's one of the most important ones that I think I've done, and I really highly recommend going and exploring it. And a lot of components and solutions and sort of stuff are in there that have been trickled through via people and confirmation with the people I've included in the clips and stuff like that. So I highly recommend you getting onto your hydration at the moment, being a bit proactive, and there's some really cool tools that you might have some synchronistic, you've already done it, but you just, maybe the application of them is much more superior when you hear what is in that, right? So I'm going to employ this Crystal Skulls variable to employ a lot of ingredients that I've been around for many years, right? So you might be just someone that dips their toe into sort of concepts and stuff, and you may have found this, and I'm assuming that a lot of people don't really recall, or they're not across a lot of the stuff that I'll include in this. I said I had at least 4 theme of Crystal Skulls because I've got some really cool stuff relative to the OG godfather of Crystal Skulls, Nick Nocerino, right? And at the start, I've probably included a really cool Jordan Maxwell clip because I just went Keyboard Ninja and went and searched for. It's been a year, right? So I was just fascinated with what's been out there, and that it was quite interesting that I found a couple of videos released about that time. So it's fascinating, and a couple of them are very sort of contentious or negative towards them as a concept. And I welcome the discernment at the high level sort of investigation, all right? There's one called The Legend of Crystal Skulls, and I watched that last couple of days because I just felt like this release was a good marker point as a massive completion of so much and coming out the other side of stuff. So, and in better territory than I've ever been, in my opinion. And had to deal with some very, very nasty influences and sort them out for everyone and that. And so yeah, and the culmination of, say, what I will discuss about my sovereignty declaration. At the time when I was, this concept of this Crystal Skulls popped up in my awareness, and I feel like they were the ones reaching out for me of like, hey, Hodge, like, drop them, son, like, we need you, right? So that's why it came into my awareness. It wasn't something I was focused on. It was actually really a byproduct of me in my journey of getting to the level I was then. And so I included it in my version 3.1 and 0.2 that I released last year. of my sovereignty declaration. And I've evolved a lot since then. I've worked out some big concepts such as pure source and how our universe was invaded at the get-go and our source has been corrupted, the backdoor hacking that's gone on and the body architecture for hacking and stuff like that. I've also, and I'll get into it, the Akashic records, and I feel like the crystal skulls are an antidote to that, right? Because it's not organic to this planet, right? But it's very much, you know, like it's encouraged by just the outside edges of the community and the narrative and stuff like that. So, but no one's ever really discerned it. What is this? And I've got the mechanics of it, right? Because I've had extensive involvement with that. So I'm going to offer many things because I feel the crystal skulls are more a theme that can help. You know, you might be interested in it and maybe this wasn't what you were expecting, but I feel like if you're here, then on some level you know it. You just don't have it's like the echo. I've got this series called Amplify the Echo of Our Soul's Ancient Truth series. And it's like our soul knows this, but we've had no context, alright? And so when I offer some of the bigger components relative to the things that have gone on in the past, to offer sort of a reference of how vast our history is and how diabolical it's been and the wars we've been in, and to me, our era now, we're in the byproduct of many thousands of years of the occupied surface that against a force that just does not care, has no appreciation of free will. And working out the pure source concept relative to the invaders, we worked out that they didn't have to accommodate the laws of the universe. Karma has been wired against us. We worked out karma late last year in December, how it was miswired and stuff like that. The level of violations and targeting and all that sort of stuff by a very advanced multi-dimensional beings out there and in the community and stuff. And yeah, I've worked out a lot of them. So I put all that into my sovereignty declaration to help you to come through at the other side. And in my extended sessions, we do it. And it's a really amazing journey, especially after the pranic healing sort of energy hygiene work, right? So, yeah, it's just really awesome to be here, to make it to now, right? I hope you are going well. A lot of people have just been through so epic, horrendous journeys, all right? And I just really, you know, like society is how it is, and there's some potential optimism, and I'm offering that the pattern going on is still very conducive to this bigger scale thing, all right? It's not a time to be complacent or drop your guard. It's time to be extremely vigilant and push harder, all right? And perhaps, you know, like I alluded to stuff coming online with me, maybe you push hard and there's stuff just waiting for you to get the other side of, say, getting clear of energy hygiene and stuff like that, all right? So the journey has always been challenging, and committing to this level, it's, you know, 17 years of really risking it all to get to this sort of truth. I don't have any vested interest other than try and impart stuff to, you know, if there's a legacy concept, it's to make the future generations' journey a lot more simpler. They don't have to go through all this stuff and spend 17 years and stuff. So if you're an epic being that has gone through a lot, and maybe, like I say, you haven't been around me before, I'm going to assume with what I offer, because there'll be some overlap. I get into a concept called the Babylon Massacre and Ayani Massacre and the Leviathan bodysuit, which the invaders and the controllers are sort of operating in and stuff. And I feel sort of the crystal skulls fit in as a ally to us to enduring all that, when after the Ayani Massacre, about 25,000 years, we just lost control of the surface, and we've been on the run trying to evade things. And I appreciated sort of like that stronghold in the central South America. You know, there was a strategic invasion with all the conquistadors and stuff like that, and I feel it was like a fallback stronghold with all these technology, with the crystal skulls that were an ally to being an antidote to the wiping and the Babylon Massacre, right? So it's not black and white. we've been wiped and we've lost the history and they've destroyed everything and stuff like that, right? And some of the clips will be in a bigger scale, like really vast beyond like the 6,000 years of history, which when you appreciate the Babylon massacre, it's about 5,000, 5,500, 6,000 years, which is like the history of humanity. What I'm offering by sharing these clips is to see how vast it is, and then the crystal skulls I feel fit within that. And I feel just like where we are now, we've lost all the comprehension of it because of the superiority of the invasion, and they just don't give a crap about us. They're about domination and harvesting our DNA codes and stuff like that, and farming us. You know, I released a moon video about 18 months ago, and working out that was a part of the program to create breeding here and stuff like that. It's not organic to our DNA and stuff. So we're trying to get out of the consequence of it and discover what's on the other side. So ideally what I offer here is an ally to you to sort of confirm what you know, right? I feel you wouldn't be here unless you have that inquisitive mind and willing to step outside the narratives and stuff like that. So I'm just going to get into sort of a bit of a overview of the crystal skulls and how they came into my awareness, right? So as I said, it was like over my years of being in the trenches and stuff, I remember going back in 2010, I think it was, with the Project Camelot. They had the Mitchell Hedges skull on there and stuff like that, and the gentleman that is the caretaker of it at the moment and stuff. And I'm not trying to create any issue with them or anything like that. I just feel like I'm very objective and I appreciate the bigger picture and their role. And I'm just inviting you to contemplate this data, right? I'll say that up front, all right? But I'm not here to accommodate anything out there, all right? And I'm definitely not here to accommodate the narrative sort of thing. I think our truth is vaster and stuff, and we're just coming through and breaking through at the moment. It's a bit windy now. We're in a heat wave down here. It's 100 degrees, 38 degrees, and we've got a few days of it, so it's cranking down here. I hope you're warm wherever you are, by the way. I know there's some crazy things going on in the world at the moment, so I hope you're going well, and if you need the warmth, you can tune in. It's really epic down here at the moment. But yeah, I over my years, and maybe you haven't heard me say this, I would write a list of the concepts and the people, and I would just exhaust everything and everyone, and say if I came up across a concept like the crystal skulls, I would go keyboard ninja and just go hardcore. Being the IT engineer I used to be, and very, very, accomplished on searching online and stuff like that, I got into my history of the records, hunting records down before there was even Yahoo, back in Alta Vista days, if you remember that. So there was no search engines. You had to really be able to find things, and longhand and stuff like that. So I became very, very good at searching on the internet in the 90s. And then when I got into IT and Google came around, the very organic, unprofitable, purist Google that came out in 2004, it was just brilliant. And the search engine, what you got, it was just such a leap forward. And then I had my ability to search. I went passive instead of proactive on my problem solving. I realized that other people out there were having the problems, and so I could rely on my ability to find other people that had the problems, but also publish the solutions and stuff. So my whole philosophy on problem solving became very appreciative of all the data out there, and the key was to be able to access it. So when I started getting into this in 2008, the passion, the hardcore nature of everything, I was just on. Like I would do 20 hours a day, sleep, get up, devour stuff over and over again, and just in a mega download phase. So during that, the crystal skulls did come up for me. And you go to bookshops and stuff like that. I just miss the browsing. If you guys ever went to Borders bookstores, they were just like oval size football field size with massive spiritual mind-body sections, and I was back into currency trading there, and just the books there, I'd grab a pile of 20 and buy a coffee and just devour all that I wanted and buy a lot and stuff. But yeah, I do remember books about the crystal skulls and stuff. That's not a really big topic that's covered these days. So but yeah, that it came up, so it was something I appreciated, but I was never really truly into, right? I know it's out there and stuff, but they're just interesting. I think the mystery is massive, right? The gaps, it's like we don't know, and a lot of people are just drawn into mysteries. They don't actually want to know, they just want the allure of the vastness of the mystery of the unknown, right? And I appreciate that. So when people get the truth, it can be quite disappointing, okay? But to me, ideally what I'm offering here is some components that you've never even contemplated together in a very elegant way that will take you to a whole new level. And if you're interested in this theme, it might be the catalyst, like the codex that unlocks so much that you see what is going on, all right? So just I really invite you to appreciate an expanded view on things and have the courage to go into your unknown, and just, you might go, no way, Hodge. It's funny, no way. All right, I remember this mate that I used to work at Burger King, and you go no way to him, and he'd go, way, Hodge, way. So it's not no way, it's way, okay? So yeah, you might be going no way, and I'll be going, way, dude, way, all right? Just go with me, okay? So yeah, like me, many years later, 2024, so 14 years, and all the journey I've been through all that time. As I said, it's never been something I've forgotten. Some of you guys might be really into them and stuff, all right? But it just really came into my awareness very randomly late January, early February last year, 2024. So I was working very hard on, I might have mozzies and ants going at me, all right? So if I have little interruptions, I'm probably being bitten. Funny, the insects biting me, because I go hard at the insectoids and the mantis and discern that those frackers, they're not good, all right? And a lot of the off-world species, I do not trust them, all right? You should raise your bar on all the off-world stuff at the moment, big time. But yeah, I was just working very hard in creating my Infinite Potential Sovereignty Declaration version 3.2. I released that around mid-February last year, 2024. It was a very significant release for me. And I employed that in my bigger sessions where I really clear the path for amazing beings to get to the other side of all the crap they've been through. And defining your sovereignty with your voice to your energy field is such a potent thing. And then when people come through my sessions with the pranic and then employing it to clear all the blocks and issues and entities and stuff out the way, it's just, then you can go and clobber everything and clear your path, right? You need to be vigilant on that, right? I give it away, right? I give all my clarity away, but employing it with me in my sessions is a much more potent way of doing it. And I aim to really shortcut perhaps 5, 10, 20, 30 years in my sessions, right? Yeah, and then I get to the clarity side, and then we can really see what's going on, and people just, with all that, they see everything going on, and it's very profound, and it integrates really well, right? Yeah, so I was doing my evolution, and it took 2 months. It was a huge investment, right, of hardcore to create that, and then give it away on my Access to Me site. And then it just popped up. It was really fascinating. It was like from a massive left field. And it was like, holy cow. And so to me, I feel that they were the ones communicating with me and wanting that. Because say in my mechanics of working with the 22 and all that sort of stuff, right? I might just show the image quick, right? I've employed this many times, and we worked out the divide light concept. Like light and dark are all a creation of a negative anti-God, alright? So they were stealing our DNA codes and stuff like that. But say for me, like last year I worked out all this mechanics, and I've got the spiritual no man's land concept and stuff like that. So getting through all this and doing my mechanics, the energy hygiene and the sovereignty, it was getting above there. And it's not always been perfect, and I don't claim to be. It's a work, and it's, you know, commitment and leave no stone unturned. But I feel like, say if I got to this, then the crystal skulls were able to get through to me, alright? And I'm very discerning of what comes to me and that. But I work with crystals and all that sort of stuff, and it's funny, like, we think we're the boss, but a lot of the time I'm just working for them, and you might feel like that as well. Like, they're the ones wanting stuff, right? So I'm very discerning and careful of what I pick up on that, but it was very potent and clear, this crystal skull variable, right? So then I appreciated all the mechanics of my sovereignty declaration and working out the invaders and all this sort of stuff. And relative to the bigger skulls, and I'm going to offer some clips here relative to context for the crystal skulls as a variable in our defense, alright? And so, because I appreciate all of these big skulls, I feel that they came into my awareness as a pattern recognition variable to see how they fit, alright? So I feel like where I come from is very different from most people. But ideally, I'm helping you bridge all this at the moment and contemplate you at a bigger level, alright? So I'm just going to move on, okay? And I just reiterate this. From my perspective, I felt like we've come on the back, like we're, you know, retreating after so many massive defeats that we don't even know about. Hey, buddy, got a little bird just chilling with me. Hey. So he actually took an ant, alright, that was interesting, to protect me. But yeah, it's we have to be willing to consider we're at the byproduct of retreat after retreat, loss after loss, of in a way we've never even contemplated, and we're so grinded down to being a minuscule aspect of ourselves. It's almost like, you know, we're grinded down to nothing, that we've got nowhere other to go than forward. And I've offered Influencers Part 7 a few weeks ago, that where it feels like these guys aren't going to stop, right? They're rolling out their stuff to maintain their control at another level and all that, and we've got this window to really make the most of it right now. So I just really incentivize you to be proactive at the moment, alright? Don't rest, don't retreat, don't think you're good. A lot of people are so hacked at the moment they don't even know what's going on, and you might be getting a sort of a sense of relief, but it's to disarm you and not make you push further and harder, alright? So I really invite, your wiring is probably potentially very messed up and stuff. So ideally I'm giving you a lot of data points to, say, reference for, and it might unwire you to get you straight and see what's going on, and invite you to contemplate at a much bigger level right now, alright? And really get onto it. Don't waste this time. We've got a window to really make the most of things, right? So I'm just going to offer some pattern recognition stuff, right? I'll try not to get into it too much. I'm really glad to be here. I feel really good. So I've talked a bit already, but I've offered a really cool Jordan Maxwell clip offering like how amazing Nick Nocerino was at the start. And I got to get through this pattern recognition thing, and I'm going to offer some AshayanaDeane clips, because I've just been revisiting her with getting into a few of the concepts like the Leviathan bodysuit tech, which the invaders occupy, that goes back a long way, and then the Ayani massacre 25,000 years ago, and then the Babylon massacre, and then the radio body over Earth mechanics, which the Akashic records, or I call them the Akasha Bullshita records. So the reason why I offer that is, say, you probably have an appreciation of what went on in the Yucatan, sort of Central America, with the gods and stuff, and to me all the gods were invader aspects to hijack a lot of the cultures and stuff like that, and seed even the 2012 movement, which it's hard to believe it's 13 years ago now, but that was so massive. Like the momentum leading up to that, like the 5 years, it was just really nourishing how it felt like there was a huge purpose going on, but to me it was all seeded by all of these guys way back then. And that's why I'm saying the crystal skulls are probably more important and pivotal right now relative to being an antidote to all this stuff, right? And that's why I want to offer all this context sort of stuff and the pattern recognition and the Ashayana clips, and then I'll offer something really cool relative to Nick at the end, all right? So I'm just going to get into that now. So it might be interesting, say all these components I offer and you really take them on board, and the crystal skulls might be a real fascinating variable for you that holds an immense interest, that might be a real catalyst. And so by exploring all that I say here, it might be a key, like an enigma for you to unlock all your stuff on a whole new level, right? So it might be really fascinating. You might be able to actually tune into the crystal skulls. They might be wanting to get to you and stuff, but I might be just offering some mechanics here in an objective way that might really unlock that for you. So I hope that happens for you, right? But I'm just going to try and be pretty quick into the pattern recognition stuff. I've offered this in our Intuitive Potential Part 7 a bit earlier in the year. But with this, I'm just assuming you're not across my stuff, right? It might be a bit of a going over things for the veterans and stuff and those hardcore with me, but it's always a very valid sort of thing to go through. And especially the victories that I've sort of said I had these last week or two, I feel like you might be in new territory with that because of what I was able to work out and effect for a soul, all right? So I'll just get into it quick, all right? So this is an image I've offered relative to pattern recognition. And you might have been like getting patterns, all right? But not really contemplating or how they affect things, all right? Maybe you've acquired a lot of data over your years as well, but it's just not gelling into place, all right? But ideally, me putting all this together on a theme that you're interested in, you have a lot of passion, that passion might be a catalyst for you to really engage at a whole new level with the context that I offer that's quite out there, that I challenge all the narrative and stuff like that. So my effort to put all this together for you is to be an ally for that, all right? And the way I offer my data is an opportunity for you to contemplate and invest in, alright? And so I might be offering my patterns and stuff like that to you. It might be just data. And the issue is that there might be a lot of influences that are corrupting your perceptions and stuff, and that's why I'm suggesting my tools and all that sort of stuff. And maybe they're a bit distorted, and maybe like a lot of people out there, not you, but you can observe people that are contorted by the structures of society, like the 6,000 years and all that sort of stuff, because they're accommodating sort of religions and all that sort of stuff. And I really hope people get a lot from that and stuff, but I'm really inviting right now, we need to have the courage to go beyond all of our dogmas and our assumptions and stuff and perceive at a whole new level. And to me, that's where our intuitive potential lies, going beyond the known into the unknown sort of thing. So I've offered this in Intuitive Potential Part 7 as well. But ideally, like, I'm imparting data for you to discern and work out you against and clear all your blocks and stuff. And one of the things I know with me, it's like I'm a very shiny mirror. You might think I've got issues, but you're getting the reflection of you. So if that's going on, then I really invite what you think is going on with me. It might be you that you're not willing to see. The difference between judgment and observing, all right? Observing is appreciating the whole, but judgment is not seeing what you need to see about yourself, sort of thing. Right? That's just an observation versus pattern recognition mechanics. So ideally out of this, and the crystal skulls variable might be a catalyst for you to get beyond some blocks and all that sort of stuff. Right? I'm just going to move on. So this is mechanics of the narrative and the sub layers. Alright, and I go back many layers, but I've got 5 or so here, right? So the mainstream and media and all that sort of stuff is the bottom. Then it might be the conspiracy and alternate communities below. The third might be getting into healing and all that sort of stuff. The 4th and 5 are like, you know, this invader concepts that I'm going to invite, the bigger scale of history that we've never been taught, alright? but we know something, all right? We know there's more, and because there's all these vested interests that are relying on it. So, and then there's the agendas going on that are vaster and bigger and very masterful and organized that I started offering in Influences Part 7. But I've got this on my Instagram as well if you want to see it, all right? But it's just the sub-layers of the narrative, like the mainstream media, education, government and all that, and then what's going on behind all that, and then the secret stuff and healing, and then the mechanics I say relative to all the sovereignty declaration. It's in there in very few pages that can give you a real fast track to awareness and stuff like that, and ideally you're sovereign from all the misguided stuff going on out there, because from my opinion that I've said, it's none of this stuff would be needed if we were inferior. So it's an opportunity for you to engage your superiority from my perspective, and then get to the truth and all that. So in all this, maybe the crystal skulls, like in the narrative, if you go, like I said, the legends of the crystal skulls, there's a lot of discernment in that, more geared to the narrative sort of stuff. But if you go and appreciate Nick Nocerino sort of stuff, right? And I just really appreciate the OGs. I didn't say this at the start, but I love those people that came through, like the 80s and stuff like that, because it was so tough. There was no internet. It was only word of mouth and stuff. So that's what makes the godfather of Crystal Skulls, Nick Nocerino, so profound to me, all right? Because it was, I've interacted with a lot. When I got going, I went into meditation group, and I was dealing with like people in the 80s, 90s from back then, and they went all through that era. And to me, these days it's more formulaic on the abilities. Like I say, the Akasha bullshitter, all right? People fed into it, but there was more like a very organic, original sort of talents back then, all right? People were more individualistic. Like I remember going to healing in this meditation group, and a lady would do iridology. Like she would heal your ears, and she would pick up all your body issues just putting your hands by your ears and stuff like that. So I appreciate the wisdom of these older generations, and I have a soft spot for them, like people like Andre Baharich and Itzhak Bentov and Bob Beck and Richard Alan Miller and stuff. So Nick Nocerino is someone that's sort of been missed, but I'm not going to put the obituary sort of clip in. I'll save that for the next video. But he knew 200 modalities, right? So it's just like very exceptional being, all right? So it's just, I take his perspective a lot more weight, all right? So at the end of this, I'm going to offer a really good clip of him again from that lecture. That lecture is from the 1990s. The Jordan Maxwell at the start was from 2013. The Asher clips that I'll include soon will be from 2001 and 2. The early Asher is sort of really good. We discern the beloveds behind her, and they're just reptilians and stuff like that. But there's a lot more truth in her earlier stuff, and that's what I just love about her. It's the history reference to, because I was so in deep with the Akashic records, and it never, it never caught fire in people. We were codependent on external sort of stuff, and there's a lot of people that are should be very discerned that are pushing it, all right, that operate with ETs and all this sort of stuff. So to me, it's like anyone that supports that, all right, needs to be massively discerned. And I've said this before, you guys out there that have epic talents that tune into it, just take on board the mechanics I say and discern it. And in my opinion, there's something better beyond there waiting for you that's more organic and aligned to our true history, all right? So it's just, this is an opportunity to talk about the narratives on different levels, okay? So I'm just going to move on, all right? So appreciate that. Just measure yourself. You can draw your own. I have some of my variables. You may not agree with them, but draw your own of what they're coded on and what you need to be able to penetrate and get through, right? To appreciate things at a bigger level. But ideally, I'm giving a lot of different layers of the narrative here, and then you'll find your own pattern, okay? So this is the second image relative to that, right? And this is about, say, not accepting the multi-dimensional or going beyond the narrative view of things, all right? Relative to your pattern recognition stuff. So just imagine appreciate how many people out there, they're sabotaging their potential because they're not willing to go beyond the mainstream sort of thing, or what they're appreciate as society accepted to be one of the herd sort of thing, right? Wanting to be accepted by others, I get that, right? Like me doing what I do, I go against, I one of my variables is the answer, the truth, and then getting the context, and then the solution. Like this metaphor is for me. I'm worried about getting the answers and then understanding, because once you get the solution, it's big aha moments sort of thing. So this side is like the limit of the narrative concepts that you're willing to accept. So you're not willing to accept beyond the 6,000 years sort of thing, or go into multi-D sort of stuff, right? But I would just invite that it's potentially very limiting, and then the patterns going on, you're vulnerable to what you're not willing to accept, okay? And I'm not saying you, but you can observe it with people. You can see the pattern recognition of people. They're willing to contort into what they're willing to accept rather than the what is, okay? And then they're vulnerable, and then they get influenced and stuff. And that's what I say about the projection with me and stuff, because I bust all the invaders and the influences and stuff. So I get pretty epic polarity in that, and that's confirmation that I'm doing good. I don't take it negative, right? I'm just relentless, and I keep pushing forward, right? So I'll just go to the other side. So if you're not willing to accept, say, multi-D or a variable that goes beyond what you're willing to accept, your pattern recognition can get very corrupted, right? Whereas if you're willing to accept stuff, you might have variables that you get and conscious Tetris variables that are corrupted, so your perceptions are limited. So to me, it's an invitation to consider that you might be limiting yourself, all right? And all you need to do is just accept things. And I'm appreciative of the energy levels in people's bodies, that they can't go beyond sort of thing. Because if they unravel things, then it's like a domino effect, and it takes a lot of energy in the body, and most people are very depleted, all right? And I got into that in our Infinite Potential Healing Part 7 about the hydration and the cognitive functions sort of stuff, right? So I invite you to go and explore that, right? I'm just going to move on. So that's where we can be blocked by our own willingness to accept data and stuff, right? So this is the third one, where we're willing to accept things, right? And contemplate, because the vulnerability that we have if we don't. And one of the big concepts I worked out with these anti-gods with some allies in the missions and stuff, like the anti-god controlling light and dark and all the indigenous sort of stuff. They were, light and dark were playing off each other created by one being. So we worked out all the indigenous stuff on the earth and stuff was invalid, so we removed it, right? And I don't like saying that, but it's all about solutions and moving forward. And I would say if I was limited by the multi-D of contemplating of all this stuff, then we're blinded by the anti-gods and the source of all this issue, so we're vulnerable to it, right? So I'm just inviting this relative to the bigger history sort of stuff that I'm going to offer in a sec. But I'm inviting you to contemplate at a bigger level of just what is. You don't have to accept everything, but have it in a discernment level, right, of just data points, and then your pattern recognition can kick in a bit like that second image, right? Because this is an image relative to how our full vista of perceptions and seeing everything versus it getting corrupted and backdoors getting put in, and then our perceptions being hacked and all this sort of stuff. So this stuff has been going on, and it's at a really rampant rate, all right? There's a lot of effort to distort people's perceptions in different paths opening up. Like maybe you've been smashed and you get relief, and then you think the relief is good, but you've compromised yourself and you're being corrupted, so you're not seeing things accurately and stuff like that, right? So that's why I say be vigilant, be thorough. I've offered my tools and I do what I do, right, to help clear this out, okay? So you might be battling these sort of things in this today with me, right? So just like you are the authority over your body and what goes on, all right? And perceiving things accurately and the truth and all that, anything interfering with that is a violation, and that's an asset that you can work with, all right? So I've even got a 3-page sovereignty declaration that you can just do an audit and clear all this stuff out, right? So it might be an interesting tool of working with that before and after, all right? This is an image I've employed many times. This is just the influences that go on that no one knows about, all right? And they can really distort your perception mechanics, all right? Like things in your energy field, they can be entities. They're not like a being or anything. They're just like an energy in a certain energy field and stuff like that. Or you might chips in your body, or your perceptions, like those lines are like the streams of information that one or two might be corrupted in the vastness of stuff. Oversoul hacks and all that sort of stuff, right? The level of targeting going on is outrageous, and most people have no concept, right? So I would just invite you to contemplate all these things in the pattern recognition, how much it can be distorted without people knowing it. But ideally what I'm doing in all this is breaking it open for you, alright, with a concept that you might be very interested in, okay? So I'm just going to move on now, right? So interesting, alright? So I hope you're appreciating this and offering us a lot of training relative to employing the crystal skulls as a variable that fit into a lot of stuff. And now I'm wanting to get into some real epic, vast data concepts thanks to AshayanaDeane. And I have reviewed her and I discern her a lot, but I also am enormously grateful for what she has offered over a couple of decades now, right? You know, this stuff was post 9/11, early 2022. And I'm going to offer 2 separate clips here because there's 3 or 4 big things that I want to offer that are in different parts of this. And as I said, you may never have covered my stuff before, and so you may never have covered this stuff before either, alright? Those that have been in the trenches with me and stuff, as I said at the start, there's been a massive victory of sorts that I feel everyone has been affected by. So that might free up a lot of your perception mechanics while I repeat this stuff, alright? And so you hearing all this now, you might really hear it for the first time. You'd be like, holy cow, like, is that for real, sort of thing? So there's 4 or 5 main parts, right, in this. And I've got some really cool Asha recordings on my website and a page dedicated to her, so you're welcome to go grab them and listen to them, of these variables in a bit more detail. And I've offered my Amplify the Echo series. Part 13 was about the Ayani massacre, and I'm contemplating more relative to that, alright? I left that undone, alright? But that was a massive event 25,000 years ago that we lost the surface of the planet, alright? And everything has been on the run since then. The Babylon massacre was after that, about 6,000 years ago, alright? And that's where I feel the crystal skulls fit in. To me, they were a technology, you know, found their way to us or created to be an antidote that we could actually reanimate our consciousness relative to wiping, okay? And so that's why that stronghold in the Yucatan, sort of Central America, and that was really targeted in the 1500s, you know, by the Vatican and the conquistadors to really destroy those cultures, because they had to really eliminate everything else. And then they pillaged and used the DNA codes to create Leviathan technology that the rulers are ruling in, alright? So she gets into the Leviathan concept relative to creating the body that all the invaders will, you know, as souls will incarnate in and rule, okay? So it's a bit broad. It doesn't get into a huge amount of detail, but I think they're very rich clips. The first one was an audio from covering many of these variables, and the second part is a clip that I've used recently as well, but like I said, I feel it will be very potent right now relative to the Ayani massacre, the Babylon massacre, and the radio body over the planet, which to me, the Akashic records is a effort to suppress the crystal skulls. Like, I see the Akashic record and the crystal skulls as opposites, alright? I feel the crystal skulls are an ally to us to reanimate ourselves, and we can go into the temples. And I'm not going to include the clips here, but I've offered them in the past about Freddie Silver. And I'll look, like I said, I was planning to do 4 releases on this and get to the conclusions at the end, but I've lost a year, so I'm bringing this stuff forward so you have it up front, so to speak. And then you can reevaluate the crystal skull's role in them, because I feel like I got the aha moment of them working on all this bigger stuff, if that makes sense. So I came from a different angle, and they, as a puzzle piece, just revealed themselves in it, okay? Like I said, the Leviathan concept, the Ayani massacre, the bigger wars, all right, the bigger scales of time of how massive the wars we've been in and how much we've just suffered from that, then the Babylon massacre to ultimately just negate everything, and the history for the last 6,000 years has been built around those sort of things. To me, the crystal skulls were like an antidote to unwipe us and reanimate our consciousness. So they were storing our consciousness, I felt. And so we could go to the crystal skulls, or we could go to the stone circles, and there was a network linked up to all that, I feel, right? That hasn't been talked, but it's just like a pattern recognition thing I appreciate. And then the radio body over the planet. So they've been wiping us, trying to destroy the cultures, destroy and hijack the technology, because one of the things Nick Nocerino gets into is the perversion of them to, I feel like the Aztecs doing all the, the sacrifice would put all the trauma into them so that they would be perverted sort of thing. But he talks about the perversion and stuff. And then the radio body relative to the Akashic record and, the gods like Quetzalcoatl that went to the Yucatan and took over the Mayan sort of stuff and that. And how they're revered, but to me they're leviathans, alright, invaders that hijack the societies and stuff. And so I feel like I've offered in my Amplify the Echoes, like the whole brewing of the 2012 sort of thing goes back to the Mayan calendar, which is all related to all this. And it's brilliant, it's amazing, and it's highly advanced sort of stuff. But to me, the whole 2012 was a distraction from all this stuff, right? Like, it was very supported in the alternate, ET and spiritual communities leading up to that just led to nothing, right? So all of this stuff, I'm just giving you the bigger context of the war of truth and all that sort of stuff that's gone on over this vast era of time, right? And it's only small, like this last 6,000, we think it's all, but again, I'm offering these clips to show how vast the potential is, right? So you discern it, you explore. It'll take a little bit, but it'd be very rich for you guys to go through now with this context, alright? And then I'll see you during it. I'll just offer like that was the bigger clip, and then this is a second clip, alright? And then I'll see you on the other side, alright? So enjoy. I hope you really get a lot from this now with so many things going on, okay? Enjoy. I'll see you on the other side.
What's fascinating about the history, if we begin to look at just the series of events, I mean, we think about what we're taught by contemporary historians and archaeologists and scientists and the whole bit. Boy, they've missed a lot. Part of the reason they've missed a lot is because they will not accept the fact that there might have been races here that were more intelligent than we are, but they were at the time. They also had weapons capacities that were much different. You're not going to find a lot of buried dead bodies of the cloister races or even the Anunnaki, because you can vaporize bodies with certain little types of tools that's much neater. You don't need to bury them in the ground. So you're not going to find a lot of corpses from these races. The advanced races worked on a whole different system. You're not going to find ancient ruins of, buildings that were kind of small and primitive. These were later. These were Anunnaki settlements, a lot of them. So if we can realize that we have this whole set of history, and you can look at, when you're on your own, you can look at page 60 and see just the progression of these different things. Now, there's not a lot said about them here. More of this is going to be covered in detail in the second printing of Voyagers 2, Secrets of Amenti. But there's a couple of things that are very important to understand in relation to what's happening now. And that was the creation of the Leviathan force. The Leviathan is a force of beings that are running the Antichristos agenda. Some of them are the controllers, and there are not many of them. Others are simply the puppets. They're all in human form on planet at this point. Their puppets are being used, and they have a right to call themselves human, and they have a right to choose to enter the Emerald Covenant and get bioregenesis so they can do full ascension if they choose. But the Leviathan force is run by a small group of controllers that are in human bodies but are not humans. There are draconian ones, and there are Anunnaki ones. This came about it really started in 250,000 BC, when a group of the Nibiruan Anunnaki raided Earth and raided the human settlements here of Seeding 3, there's an attitude that's apparent in military operations here that's very Anunnaki and Draconian, how they treat their own. Their own are considered expendable, and they'll just make more. That's how they look at it. As long as they can suck life force off other things that have life force, they can perpetuate themselves, so therefore they can create things and use them like Kleenex and throw them away when they're done. This is their orientation toward being creator gods. So we went from having the Neanderthal as not part of the Emerald Covenant to a restatement of the Emerald Covenant being made in 246,000 BC. That was the last time the Emerald Covenant was brought here, 246,000 BC. It was to end warring again that was taking place between the various races on the planet. And the humans, of course, were very glad to enter. They had never left the Emerald Covenant, most of them. Some of them had, because they were so tired of the other races, they took a militant stance too. Fine, you're going to kill us, well, we're going to kill you first. Some of the humans made bad decisions and got involved with the warring mentality because they were so tired of being attacked. With the restatement of the Emerald Covenant, which was brought to us by the Maharaji Blues of Sirius B, they came in with their ships and their ambassadors, and they created meetings, beginning with first small groups of people, and then larger, and then making it a political event where it was open to anybody on the planet. With the Emerald Covenant restatement, it was agreed that one of the groups that originally came out of the Enki Anunnaki, that had been one of the raider groups, one of those groups agreed to enter the Emerald Covenant. They wanted to do bioregenesis, and they were willing to live peacefully. They were tired of the warring. This group is the one that became known as the Thoth Enki group. They're Pleiadian Nibiruan races, and Thoth was one of them that was in a leadership position that was instrumental in motivating the others to enter the Emerald Covenant. Thoth was a good guy in the beginning. Thoth he was from Nibiru originally, and he had a vision for his race, for the Anunnaki race. He felt that he understood the fact that they were created with an anti-Christos purpose, a destructive purpose, and he knew that they could evolve beyond that. So in the beginning, he really believed that it was worth entering the Emerald Covenant, and he motivated a lot of them to do it. The Thoth Enki Anunnaki entered the Emerald Covenant, and they became the ones that, way back when that Treaty of El Anu was formed, when it was promised that the Nephilim and the Anunnaki hybrids would have a chance to bioregenerate through creating a hybrid line again, but not one that was so Anunnaki that it took over all the humans like the Nephilim had. This is where all that started. With the Thoth Enki group entering the Emerald Covenant, certain groups of the Neanderthal locus that were being abused and had taken off on their own to escape the abuse that they were suffering at the hands of the Anunnaki here, were offered. And it was like trying to communicate with an intelligent animal. They could understand language to some degree. They couldn't understand sophisticated concepts, but they knew safety. And they could feel intention, just like an animal can. If you come to an animal, aggressively with an attitude, it'll turn into an animal and probably bite you if it can. You could approach the Neanderthal in a way that if you offered them gentleness and kindness, they were like the dogs or the cats are your best friend. They'll just love you. They were more like a dog would be as far as that devotion thing. A being that treated them kindly, with gentleness. They responded to that so well that it was almost like having, I'd hate to say pets because we didn't look at them as pets, but they were beloved to us, the guardian groups that were here. We made promises to regenerate them, to help them, and they would be able to help the Thoth Enki group, and the Thoth Enki group would be able to help them because they both had Anunnaki coding. So they were upgraded and combined with one of the human groups from Inner Earth. They had been on the planet for a while, but they were on Inner Earth at this point. They were called the Hyperbornians. They had a bit of Anunnaki coding in them from Seeding 2. They were used in genetic engineering. It was, again, a genetically engineered thing. You couldn't procreate yet. They were combined with a little bit of the gene code of the Neanderthal, a little bit of the Thoth Enki gene code, and a little bit more of it began their progression of strand 1, getting the fire letters put back in the right order. progressively, there were rounds of evolution where upgrades were given, where they'd acquire strand 1, then strand 2 in print, then strand 3, progressively, literally, picking up the human pattern. The souls that incarnated into these forms, the souls that had been Toth, Enki, Anunnaki, the souls that had been Neanderthals, these were out of the Anu Elohim fallen matrix. They were getting the opportunity to rise above their matrix that was choosing to keep them enslaved, and to re-enter the ability to evolve to Christed, to Christed status and beyond. So it was a good mission. It was a good program. It was a good idea, but it didn't work out really well. It started with the first upgrade was done, let me see, when did they do this? I think it was 155,000. They took in 155,000 BC, that's when the combination was made of the Neanderthal and the human and the Toth, Enki, Anunnaki. And that created what were called the Lucas Neanderthal were upgraded to Luhari. They were called Luhari. The L actually comes from, the L relationships come from the Lulatan family of the Toth Enki collective. So it was a family of Anunnaki that were called Lulatan. That's where all these L relationships come from. When you see like the Lucas and the Luhari and then the Iluli, these were the evolutionary ones. They were part of the Lulatan family. The first upgrade was to Luhari, and that became Cro-Magnon 1. All right? The second upgrade, now that one took place in 155,000 BC. 152,000 BC, the second upgrade took place, and they went from Cro-Magnon 1 to Cro-Magnon 2, which was called the Iluli Levi. This is where the word Leviathan starts. The Iluli Levi were the first race of Anunnaki hybrids that could procreate with humans directly. They did not have to be genetically engineered in order to continue their race lines. That created a huge vulnerability because they could also be inhabited by fallen angelic consciousness and taken to raid human settlements and create race lines of progressively more human bodies that carried Antichristos agendas. And this is precisely what they did. Not all of them. The Iluli Levi tribes of Anunnaki actually stayed fine under Toth's direction until 22,500 BC, when Toth broke the Emerald Covenant. That happened here. When Toth broke the Emerald Covenant, actually it was 22,340 BC, precisely, when he broke the Emerald Covenant. It resulted in what was called the Iani Massacre, which took place on the island that we're on right now. The Iani Massacre was a big setback for the whole Christos realignment mission. And it was the second major event that led up to what we're living right now, and why the conditions that we're living under have become so severe, and we have no clue that they're even severe, most of the races on the planet. So we went from 152,000 BC to the Iluli Levi tribes, the first ones who could procreate physically and naturally with humans. 151,000 BC, the Iluli Levi were upgraded with the next strand content of the angelic human to what was called the Iluli Judah, Homo sapien. Now, if you look at these names, Levi, Judah, the next one is Nephi. They started their own little line of 12 tribes, and they have orchestrated something called transposition of race identity as they've progressed. The tribes that are listed as the 12 tribes in the Bible are the 12 tribes of the Leviathan. That wasn't the original tribes. The original tribes were named after the tones they carried that matched the stargates that they went with. They were the sacred sons. They were the names of the tribes. There's literally been a massive takeover of this planet and this race. All that had to be done was come in, get your numbers strong. You could procreate and hybridize with anything you wanted to at that point. Once they had the Levi tribe of Anunnaki that had the ability to create live births with human strains, all they had to do was rape and take females, and they could create them. And that's what they did. And they have progressively created a line that now is called the Human Illuminati. They look human, but the Leviathan ones don't have human souls. They are not human. Now, most of them, just like they used to use the Neanderthal, this is how they used their own here too. unless they're the high council that are running the big Antichristos game, their others are just considered expendable. These are people like you and me. They could be any one of us. We could be from that matrix and not know it. That doesn't mean we're bad people at all. It means we're being used, and we have a chance, now that we're in a human body, to break free and to have, for once, free will. Because those matrices don't give their children free will. They use them and exploit them. So this is why what I teach teaches about the fact that there are differences in humans here. You need to know the differences before you can see the commonality. Okay? The reason we've been fighting with each other for so many thousands of years is you have 3 different soul groups here fighting for possession of the planet. All right? It's not that just humans don't get along with each other or that the human nature is a fighting nature. It isn't. Human nature is peaceful. Okay?
Hey, I hope you got a lot from that clip. Very rich, like I said. The Leviathan, the Ayani, the bigger war, getting into the Babylon sort of stuff, and all the species and beings involved that potentially are seen as positive, but they're not, right? And all the species as well, right? So it's a bit simpler. It's meant to be simpler, but it's just appreciating concepts, because this all trickles down to now, what's going on, right? So we might think good and bad and blue and white and all that sort of stuff, but they're just all the species, right? And we're still under control and occupation. So this is like another effort from my end to help break out of that. And the crystal skulls, as I said, might be catalyst for you to appreciate all this on a bigger level, all right? So I'm going to offer the second clip here that gets a bit more into the more recent times. The Babylon Massacre, the radio body over Earth, and I'll get into stuff on the other side. All right, so enjoy. I hope you get a lot from this as well.
So here you had this interesting thing happening between Thoth and Enoch. Enoch fell from grace here, but he came back later because of what had happened. And that's where, after this period, he became a CDD plate speaker, where he had been entrusted. But again, in 10 AD, he decided to go in the other direction, and until 1983 AD. So there's the people that are channeling and bringing through information and talking to these people, these are who they're talking to. All right, can we put the next one up, please? Yeah, it's just, I was amazed when I started to get the history coming off the place. Oh my God. Like, oh no, I have to tell people that? Do I really have to expose that? They like Enoch and Thoth, All right. The progression continues. 9560 BC, Luciferian Covenant. Now, there wasn't a major pole shift after that. It was a slight pole shift, and there was another small glacial period after that 10,500 BC thing. And if you look back into some science, like science theory, they're telling us that certain parts, there seemed to be a quick freeze during that period of time, about 10,000 years ago or so. They're not exactly sure when it happened. So these fit in with what some of the geological information that our scientists are finding. All right, 9560 BC, Luciferian Covenant, Pleiadian Nibiru, Samjaji, Luciferian Anunnaki, the blondes. Okay, if you have anything to do with the UFO movement down in the States, people talk about the blondes or the Nordics a lot. They're the pretty ones. They look like humans and they're very blonde. That's these guys. All right, they're the ones that raided Procyon to get those pretty blonde bodies. Sirius B, Marduk Anunnaki, which are the Anunnaki Omicron dragon moth ones, Enlil Odedicron, which are Anunnaki reptile avian, Thoth Enki Zephelium, which are Anunnaki Zeta, and Marduk Necromaton Luciferian, which are Anunnaki Alpha Omega Centauri Blue Centaurs. All right, see all these forms? They've hybridized all over the place to create more of their races. All right, all of these guys got together, and Galactic Federation, and the Nohasa Atlantis Jehovian or Antia, which were like from seeding one Illuminati race lines that had been living in inner Earth, and they were starting to filter back up. All right, they all, and their respective Anu-Melchizedek races, which are the ones, the Anu-Melchizedeks are the hybrids that became the Leviathan races that started in Atlantis. Okay, they entered a full alliance under a one world order Antichristos agenda, formally mandated through the Luciferian Covenant. It was called the Luciferian covenant. It was an agreement that they made that, okay, though we don't like each other very much, we're going to get this done. If we team up, even though we don't like each other, and decide before the fact who's going to get what once we grab it, at least we'll get it. And they knew, too, that it was getting to the point where the founders were very serious. They might have had a stalemate last time. The founders were not going to fail to get the Christos realignment mission done this time. They were not, they just, the Illuminati races knew that. The fallen angelics knew that. So they were going to give it their all to make sure the Christos realignment didn't happen. So this was a coalition that they made, that even though we don't like each other, we'll be friendly enemies so we get the job done. So they stopped the founders from doing the Christos realignment mission, which would close the fallen angelic matrix from this time matrix. Okay, 9,000, okay. So they agreed to have this one world order agenda together. Now, at the same time that these guys were getting together, the Omicron Draconian and Odedicron Reptilian races of Orion, they form a second competing Orion Draconian one world order agenda. They didn't like these guys, so they were going to form their own coalition. Then, at the same time, the main Cirrus A Jehovian Anunnaki, which are bipedal dolphin people Anunnaki, that race, they formed a third competing Jehovian one world order agenda. So you had three competing world dominion agendas that were set in motion during this period in reaction really to the Luciferian covenant. They'd always had their dominion agendas, but they got very serious about them. When this coalition formed, these other two, the Draconian agenda ones and the pure strain Jehovian Anunnaki ones that didn't like the other Anunnaki races, they all got very serious about their one world order dominion agendas. 9558 BC, Atlantean. All right, then we talked about before, the 3,000, or what Az had read about, the 3,470 BC Babylon Massacre, Galactic Federation, Luciferian, Palladian, and Nibiru and Anunnaki races steal Ark of the Covenant gold box and Stargate tools. They attempt world dominion beginning in Marduk Anunnaki Draconian held Babylon. So Galactic Federation and these guys, the Toth guys, go after the Draconian Anunnaki, the Marduk crew, that are holding Babylon. They create temporary planetary magnetic grid collapse. They use arc tools at Babylon and Nibiru and data crystal grid at Stonehenge, England, to create a reverse fire letter sequence distortions, further ones, in the planetary grids, which cause major mutations in the function of the angelic human DNA template, erases race memory, because what was really getting on their nerves was the Marduk Anunnaki group, who's in competition with them. They have a draconian agenda. They had Babylon. They were progressively getting control of more grids, and it looked like they were going to get control of Stargate and QSite 10. And that could be a real problem. If you're going after Gate 11, you're going to have an issue happening. So they more than just wanting to neutralize the angelic humans, they wanted to erase the memory matrix and make it very difficult for the Leviathan races to communicate with each other, because they wanted to break up this little stronghold that was happening here. So they purposely contrived a way to use the checkerboard matrix mathematicals to create very specific mutations that would reverse part of the DNA, leave part of it normal. Reverse part, leave part normal. Which would mean half of your language signals would be backwards. Right now, our languages, we were talking about this last night, our languages, if you look at our alphabet in English, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? If you took it and went like A, B, C, and then D, E, A, B, C, D, I think it's on threes. A, B, C would be straight, let's say. Then you'd have E, F, G, you'd actually reverse them. F, E, G, you'd have to reverse every set of them to actually get the actual language that was there. We had to be given new languages to be able to speak again and to communicate again. And this is where Toth likes to, and Galactic Federation like to say, oh, we came in and gave you languages. Yes, after you took them away, you know. Because the DNA and how it's sequenced determines what kind of sound frequencies we can process into cognition. And when they scrambled the DNA to the level that they did here, the old languages that we knew from Atlantis, we couldn't read them, we couldn't understand them, we couldn't make the sounds anymore. And this is part of the healing that will progressively take place. That's why when we use the Mua language translations to the clearest that they can be translated right now, those translations are progressively helping us to restore the original data banks on language that belong to this race. Okay. Okay, anyway, okay. Okay, they use the art tools, so they're trying to go after these guys to neutralize them and take care of the human races while they're at it. So they literally erased the memory records as well, where you'd have partial memory, and then the other part would be Nibiruan memory, where they literally plugged their memory grids. They started running holographic inserts, which are kind of like virtual reality pictures, down through the Nibiruan dotted crystal grid, down into the planetary radial body, which is like a projection screen. So for us to have memory, we are directly tapped into our personal radio bodies, which tap into the planetary radio body. So we started, the parts of our codes that were the normal, that weren't reversed, would hold the actual human memory. Then the other parts that were reversed would start to download Nibiruan memory, where we would progressively begin to build up the Nibiruan memory imprint, progressively reversing more of our DNA. Eventually we'll be talking totally backwards, compared to what we used to. And this has been the process by which, right now, we sit here, we don't remember who we are. We can't remember our other time vectors. And when we try to start remembering, we try to start pulling incarnational data, you can find all sorts of wacky stuff in there, stuff that doesn't quite sequence the right way. Because there's stuff spliced in between the natural sequence that wasn't meant to be there, and parts of the natural sequence were literally edited out of the memory banks on a planetary level. What we're doing with the Vecca codes, we're working with them, the Vecca codes put back the divine blueprint frequencies and the primal light and sound frequencies back into the planetary radio body and into our own, which means it's allowing the field to form again, the sound light field, that will allow the natural sequencing of our memory records on a planetary and a personal level to start coming back. Okay, let's see. Okay, all right, now when they do this, erase the memory, it blocks the natural kundalini flow in the body. This mutation that they did through the grids. It not only did all those things and erased the memory, but it blocks the natural kundalini flow in the body, causing pineal, thalamus, hypothalamus, and thyroid gland malfunctions that shorten human lifespan and block interdimensional perception in all but implanted Anu Melchizedek chosen ones, and it scrambles the natural language patterns. This was recorded as a Tower of Babel event. Now here, these body things that have taken place in our bodies since this time, because these glands, pineal is like sitting there dormant, and our scientists tell us it's like, atrophied because it doesn't do anything anymore. They have no idea what it did, right? It helped us ascend. That's what it did. These organs have been progressively malfunctioning, and the malfunction gets worse, a little bit worse with each generation, because each generation amplifies whatever coding it has. Now, these things create the chemicals that are created in the body, the biochemicals that are created in the body and in the brain because of these malfunctions, literally progressively poison the body to the point where it shortens its lifespan hugely. Where even before these mutations, at least I think we lived about 800 years, 800 to 1,000 years then. Before that, we were immortal, and they took that away by the first level by first cutting off the D12 frequency. Then after that, they amplified that, and we were able to live shorter periods when they did the 25,500 BC Nibiruan dotted crystal grid. Then they amplified it again and took us from at least having an 800 to 1,000 year lifespan down to having 75 to 100 year lifespan, and that's what we have now. I mean, this stuff is nasty. It just amazes me what kind of mentality could actually do that and live with itself. A very sick one, obviously. What's scary is it's not just a person. It's not just a mass murderer who you see in an interview and you see that there's no, literally soulless being that has no remorse or anything. These are races. These are whole races of beings that function with that kind of mentality. Okay, now, 2668 BC.
Hey, welcome back. I hope you got a lot from that, alright? I've employed it many times, but I hope with all the stuff that I offered, it's a lot more richer now, alright? And you get a lot more from it with this context, alright? So I'm just going to share an image now. I mentioned at the start, I feel like with my history with the Akashic records, and I call them the Akasha Bullshita records, this clip with Asha has the radio body concepts and stuff, and so those variables from Asha really helped me to flip all this construct that has been, from my perspective, like it's amazing and it's interesting and stuff, but it has been a derailment tool. And those of us that have gone on on a quest to find our truth and seek our soul's history and all this sort of stuff. It's a lot of us have been led down paths that have just been massive setups for failure, and as is much of the alternate spiritual community, and the low levels of the narrative that I said have been all weaponized to grind our time down and, you know, just leave us all lost and set up for failure that we're in now. So I really invite you to contemplate how much in the community is just not there to help us. It's to just keep us treading water at best, but also hijack us and lead us into traps and get our codes hijacked and all that sort of stuff. So I've got all this in the Sovereignty Declaration, and I really invite you to go and explore it. All right? I'm just going to show you an image now. So this is one I employed in the moon video relative to what the moon is, sort of thing, right? And I won't get into that now. That's there about 16, 18 months ago. But what I worked out, thanks to Asha with all this stuff, is that the Akashic Records is a file download overlay over Earth to not only isolate us from Earth, isolate us from truth, but it was also one of the things I do is Earth Pranics, and I protect Earth's soul, alright? Because there's a lot of efforts to eject her, alright? And I've found that going on the last few months, sorry. And I feel like what I did last week and the last couple of weeks, I resolved that, right? As a micro of the bigger invader, macro sort of stuff going on relative to individuals and beings in alignment and hijacked and all this sort of stuff, right? So to me, right, and this is what I appreciate, and I'm not, you know, there's a lot of awesome, very talented people out there that I know that are doing their best, and we've been led astray, right, and can actually access this and think that it's organic and stuff. But I would invite those of you that are good and not wanting to push this thing, there's something better waiting for you that's more advanced and more aligned to what the actual truth is, right? To me, the Akashic Records, I call it the Akasha Bullshitter Records, because it's there to hijack us and derail us. So some of the variables relative to people pushing it, they might be dealing with off-world species, they're pushing modalities, and if you see the flower of life symbol and stuff, do not go near that, alright? Those symbols are very, if you put them on your body, you get a negative effect, like you get really negative muscle testing sort of thing. So they're like body hacks because of all the backdoor sort of stuff. So people using the symbols, using modalities that have symbols and all this sort of stuff, supporting off-world species that are just the negatives, right? Like the mantis, the reptoids, busted the reptilians massively last year. The Dracos and the Anunnaki especially. It's like they're never being talked about, right? When they've been front and center all this time, right? So to me, it's like a lot in the community, a byproduct of the losses that we had to derail us, because I felt like those of us that were going to bubble up and be very potent, we're the biggest threat, right? And that's why so much was done to derail all our potential, especially those that are able to get beyond the narrative and get into the spiritual and get into the sub-layers of the narrative, right? So to me, the Akashic Records, right, then the crystal skulls come in. The crystal skulls are a technology that was to negate all the influences. So that's why the real massive targeting in the Central America went on to really derail them and stuff like that. That's why they're so ambiguous and so mystical and, you know, so vague in the mystery of what they're about and stuff. And there's a lot of effort to discredit them and all that sort of stuff. And I could be wrong, right? But I appreciate Nick Nocerino, right? And his epic level of appreciation of things. And, you know, his master, like I said, there's a clip that I'll offer probably in the next one that he's got 200 modalities that he was a master of, right? And how they came to him in the 80s and stuff like that. It's just, to me, those people back then had to be so superior to have success, because it was only word of mouth and that. And it was very, you know, this sort of aspect of society that we feel comfortable in, even, it was very shamed upon, right? It was very hush-hush and stuff. So it was someone to really succeed in those eras had to be profound, right? So I'm just going to share another image relative to the Akashic records, the Akasha Bullshitter, that I did before this one, right? So one thing with the moon, I worked out that the moon was masculine, it was Maldak sort of thing, but it was made to be feminized. And the earth is feminine, but it was, the obelisks are made to masculinize the surface. So there's a distortion on the sexuality of these things, right? Just to create even more confusion in that. But from my perspective, the Akasha Bullshitter came from the Bureau, and it was just a big file that was inserted into the radio body of Earth, all right? And this is that invitation into the bigger levels of the narrative sort of thing, like going into the possibilities of going on and the bigger scales of things. Like, this is just probably too mind-blowing for a lot of people to even contemplate, but where does that limit come from, that this isn't possible, you know? So it's just a level of sophistication going on, and that clip with Asha, the second one in particular, was very, very rich in many things, right? So I'm just, ideally I've offered a lot of parts with all these things, right? Apologies if it's a long time that I've gotten into all this stuff, but I'm going to get into some Nick stuff now, alright? But I really am employing this as a teaching for you to really challenge everything you know and see things on another level. Like, you might be really into this theme but never even had this sort of context to break open the possibilities of what is going on, but you've known it, right? You've sort of yearned for all this stuff, and this is really helpful and potent, and it really leaves a lot of questions, right? And questions are fun to explore. It's a sign of going into the unknown, right? So I'm just going to move on, alright? So again, thanks for being here. And I've said I've got probably, I was aiming for this to be the number 4, alright, with a lot of this context, and I've got a lot more relative to the bigger scales to see how it all fits in and how offer the mechanics of how I came to appreciate the crystal skulls now, right, as a variable. But I feel it's very potent for a lot of people, and it will be a catalyst for a lot. There's a lot of content out there, and more than likely a lot of it goes against what I'm saying, and that's all cool. It'll be up for you to decide and contemplate and maybe go beyond your level of accepted narrative that you appreciate at the moment. But yeah, I feel very good, and I'm grateful to be here, and I feel very potent. And like I just said, I just appreciate these OGs like Jordan Maxwell, Andrei Paharic, Itzhak Bentov, Richard Alan Miller, that went through eras that were just so much harder on certain levels, but I yearn for how the food was, or the EMF wasn't there and stuff like that we're all dealing with, and those sort of things, right? But Nick Nocerino deserves a lot of appreciation and notoriety and stuff, and I've got some really cool interviews with him from the 1980s. What I offered is already quite long, so I'm not going to offer them here. I'll look to offer them in the future. But this is another bit of an overview of him and an appreciation of the crystal skulls, and it's from a lecture in the 1990s. It's hard to believe. He passed in 2004, and I mentioned about this clip where some of his allies that did an obituary sort of thing in 2010 after he passed and talked about him and their experiences, and I'll probably use that as a starting clip of one of the future releases. But I just felt like I lost a year sort of thing doing all the missions and stuff, and I'll just offer an image relative to the pure source sort of stuff. Because one of the massive concepts I worked out was our source was hacked at the get-go, and our pure source code was corrupted and used as a skeleton key, and the invader aspects were the one world order and all that sort of stuff. So a lot in the community, a lot of these people working with the Akasha Bullshitter sort of thing, they're all trying to lead us astray for harvesting for another universe sort of thing. And the Incarnation War, the Leviathan, the Ayani Massacre, the Babylon Massacre, all that, it's all originating from these aspects, and there's a lot in the community still that work with it, right? So one of the big concepts, and it wasn't just purely me, it was thanks to some of my allies, but I'm just protective of them and stuff, but getting all the data points from my pattern recognition, one of the massive victories I worked out. And we did a healing, my GSF 36, with one of my allies. We actually healed source and cleared all this stuff out. So that's some of the big profound victories I've had since this Crystal Skulls Part 1. Alright. But yeah, ideally what I'm attempting to do is help you break open from all of this if you've got the remnant still in you and stuff like that. And that's why I'm saying the targeting and the polarity towards me, because I'm aligned with this, and many still don't even know it, right? And all of the stuff relative to society links up to that I'm alluding to in those clips in the context, right? So I'm just wanting to drop that as a reference now of one of the victories in that year, if you haven't watched any of my stuff since then, okay? Because ideally I'm giving you the stuff that is visceral in your body that unlocks a lot of the influences and stuff like that. And maybe you've had a lot of these in, and the stuff I allude to that I did last couple of weeks has helped you break open and get back, or just found me at this time for all this stuff, right? So I'm just going to move on. So getting back to Nick Nocerino, he's just, I feel like he was a huge loss, and you know, there wasn't much with the YouTube and stuff like that. So to me it's like an honor to be able to impart this amazing being that, you know, imparted so much and had this experience with these variables, that it's also another opportunity for me just to, you know, bring one of these OGs, like I said, Andrea Paharich, Richard Allen Miller, Itzhak Bentoff and Bob Beck and all that, just these amazing people, right, that many of us just don't know about out there. Even Jordan Maxwell at the start, right, he's an amazing being as well. So I'm just going to offer the really cool clip. It's a bit more of an overview from Nick relative to the Crystal Skulls, and you know, there's a lot of conjecture about them and stuff, but I refer to him as the authority of them and stuff like that. And if you watch Part 1 and maybe you want to go watch that again, there was some cool clips about his synchronicity with them and stuff like that, and other clips and that. And as I mentioned, there's a Legends of the Crystal Skulls, which is a bit discerning of these, and I really invite you to go and find your own conclusions and stuff. So I'm just going to leave you that clip with him now though, because this is quite long already, and I hope you get a lot from it. He's an amazing guy and just a pure, genuine soul, alright? So enjoy, I'll see you on the other side.
There are roughly now that we know of 16 ancient human-sized rock quartz crystal skulls, and they weigh between the weight of 9.5 pounds to 39.5 pounds. Their age category roughly is, according to the artifacts they are found with them, because we cannot measure silicon, we can't tell how old crystal is, so we go by the artifacts in the tombs that they are found in. And the artifacts in the tombs run from 3,500 years BC all the way back to a little over 5,000 years BC. Now that doesn't tell us how old the crystal is. All it tells us is that, somebody might have carved this 5,000 years ago. There are many, many hypotheses about crystal skulls. And since I went public with these, and we only went public, believe it or not, in 1980, by 1982, we did an international show. After the international show, an average of 1,000 skulls a month start coming in from Brazil. And the main buyers in the world of skulls are people in the United States. Even I sell them, but we sell small ones. We do not sell antiques, artifacts, which run, by the way, the cheapest is $500,000. The most expensive is placed about $50 million. So you can put a price on any price you want. They get very expensive. Now, over the years, how many people have heard of the Mitchell Hedges skull?
That was here about 4 years ago.
Yes, I know. It was in Denver, and last year you heard about the Texas Skull Max. How many were here last year? Good. Well, There's been a conspiracy over the years by a lot of people to convince the public that there is only one skull. Now, there are 3 books out, not counting this book, and the 3 books talk about one skull and the 2 skulls in museums. I have no idea why, because everything we do in our research project is passed on to these other people, so they are aware of all of the other skulls. As a matter of fact, this past year, for the first time, we got 2 human skulls together, ancient skulls, in the same room. And thousands of people came and saw them, but they were not able to touch the Mitchell-Hedges skull. They were only allowed to touch the Texas skull. The fact is that people came from all over the United States, as far south as Mexico and the Bahama Islands, to see these 2 skulls. What happened? We'll talk about that Monday. Because we worked for some amount of time, over 50 years, to get 2 skulls in the same room. Once before, in 1936, there were 2 skulls together. But the only people that saw this were the curators of the British Museum of Man. And if you can get a copy of the Book of Man, November 1936, you will get the report on the British skull and the Mitchell-Hedges skull. Otherwise, the book in 1973 to 75 was Richard Garvin's book, The Mitchell-Hedges Skull. Alice Galdi has a book out, The Mitchell-Hedges Skull. And they're selling all kinds of pictures that you can look at and get healed. I'm a researcher. I don't take a stand one way or the other. I will tell you exactly what is going on, where it's going on. You make your decisions. And we're not going to be able to tell you a lot in this hour, but we're going to try and give you some information. The Mitchell-Hedges skull is a little over 12 pounds. It was found in British Honduras. British Honduras today is called Belize. Belize was at one time what they called the outlaw country, pretty much, and it's only recently getting settled for tourists. Now, in 1924, in Louboutin, which is a ruins that you can go see down there, Mr. Mitchell-Hedges and his daughter found this skull called the Mitchell-Hedges skull, which is the most beautiful skull that we have seen, except for the rose quartz skull out of Guatemala. It is the most beautiful in the world. It has a movable jaw and is anatomically correct. There's a problem. The tomb it was taken out of, the artifacts date over 4,000 something years old. Now, it's impossible because everybody knows that this was a Maya tomb and they had no tools. Who carved this skull? And this question keeps coming up over and over and over again. Who carved this skull? How was it carved? So, of course, when you don't have answers to certain questions, and if you didn't dig it up yourself, stories start to happen. It came from Germany. No, it was made in Japan. No, it was made in China. It was smuggled into these tombs. Now, you imagine in 1924, you have to go through rapids, jungles, tribe, all kinds of things to get to these tombs. Then you have to take 2 years to dig them out, and here's this person smuggling this skull in, going down in the ground that it took them another 6 weeks just to lift the stones to get a hole to go in, and burying this skull in there. So you take your own facts. Whether it's true or false, I don't know, but that's what some of the curators tell you. But every one of them would like to have the skull. They tell you it doesn't exist, but they want to have it. 4 countries have laid claim to this skull that doesn't exist. Very interesting. Very interesting. People have tried to even buy it. They figured out ways that they might steal it. The skull seems to take care of itself. It's there in Canada. It's now in England, where it will probably make a home. I don't know. It's supposed to be in some sort of a private collection in England, which will be open to the public. The next skull, which has importance for you, because you can go to this skull as well as you can go to the Mitchell-Hedges skull, and it's the only 2 in the world you can go to, is the Texas skull called Max. Max is in Houston. And if you look at the inner light there, bulletin, I'm sure you get all the information you want on Max. If you don't get it, please see me later or during the weekend. I'll give you an address you can write to, and I'll be very happy to give you the phone number. You can call and make a meeting, get a meeting together to go down there. Max is 18 pounds, 2 ounces. Max is a healing skull, as all skulls are. The only reason we refer Max more or less to being a healing skull is it was in a healing temple for many years in the United States with a Tibetan monk called Norbu Chen. Norbu Chen, like myself, was of the Red Hat Order and studied the Bonpo. Now, why he had the skull, people say, how did he get the skull? Very simple. The skull was stolen in Sao San Agustin, as were all skulls except for the Mitchell-Hedges skull. They were stolen. And most people don't want you to know where they are or who they are, so we changed the names to protect the guilty. Norbu Chen worked on mostly actors and actresses. He was always receiving patients. He worked in 3 hospitals. He's one of the few healers in the world, like Arega in Brazil, if you've seen him, or if you've been there. If you haven't there, I think there were some videos on him. And he did wonderful work. But he couldn't hold on to money. He didn't know what money was for, except to spend it, and spend it, and he got in debt. And pretty soon he could not pay his bills. Pretty soon a little guy called IRS on his back showed up. And pretty soon a few other people showed up. And pretty soon he was trying to pay his debts off, and he gave this skull to the parks in lieu of a debt between what they say, I'm not sure what it is, $25,000 or $26,000 and $30,000. He paid his debt off to them, told them to never sell it, that it was very expensive, it was a very valuable tool, to hold on to it. They said thank you. They didn't really care about the money. They weren't worried about him paying it because he had helped their daughter. They put it in a closet and forgot it. And then they saw a show one day on TV, a UFO show, and saw a skull. So they called the TV station, said, look, we have a skull. Who can we get in touch with? And of course, some people went out, and finally, in one arrangement or another, finally they got in touch with me. And I finally went to Texas, as I do when I hear about skulls. I go to the area and worked with the skull. I'm the only researcher who has worked with Max. I'm the only one who has a contract on Max. And our team's the only people who have records on Max, except what you read. So I would suggest you get the Inner Light and enjoy it. The skull already has had many offerings on prices. But what's more interesting is the skull has received many letters from people who say, I had hepatitis, or I had a lung problem, or I had this, or I had that. We do not say skulls heal. What we say is people write letters, such as the Mitchell-Hedges when we were in Canada. 2 people came in with a very serious problem. They brought also the skull to a hospital and put it on someone's chest who was supposed to die in a few days. They did not die. We do not claim anything. The people write letters and claim that the skulls heal. So when you hear about healing skulls, pictures being sold, I can't vouch for that. But for $8 or $10, you can buy a wonderful picture from Llewellyn Press, and you'll have one of the best pictures you ever saw of the Mitchell-Hedges skull. I do not sell pictures of my collections or my research to anyone. I might once in a while give it away, but I don't sell it. Then we have the Maya skull. The Maya skull was taken in Sao San Agustin in 1921 to 1924. It was taken by 9 mentalists, again stolen, and the tomb is still today being looted. Just recently, I was in San Jose, California, which is the biggest black market warehouse in the United States, and the other one's in San Diego, where they bring all the merchandise in, they sell it out. And we have to date 6 skulls that have come out of Sao San Agustin in Guatemala. 6 so far. You know why, don't you? I want to get to the rest of them. If there are 6, I believe there are 12. And I want to get to the rest of the skulls. Because we believe that skulls come in racks of 12 and a master skull in each area. So we don't have any misunderstanding. No skull has been found anywhere in the world except in Central America. Period. Guatemala, Honduras, Belize or British Honduras, that's where all the skulls have come from. The majority, 75% of all skulls, have come from Guatemala. The British skull, they have no idea where it came from. It was taken on the Yucatan, and it's a long story about who shot who and how it got over there and finally got into a private collection. The Paris skull, slightly smaller, was perverted. What we mean by perversion is the skull was taken and then reverted into or converted into a Christian tool. They drilled a hole through the top of it and stuck a cross in it, and it was put on an altar. Of course, when the town was raided and the priest and a few other people in the town were killed, the skull was taken, and it was taken eventually by the French army and eventually found its way into France, into a private collection, and from the private collection it found itself into the Trocadero Museum by the Eiffel Tower. It is not public viewing. You will not ever see it. Why? I have no idea. In order for me to go work on the skull, I have to pay so many hundreds of dollars an hour. All research costs money. And usually it comes out of my pocket. I have no angels, and I don't have any UFOs that are dropping funds on me. So I have to locate the money. The British skull, you can see so many months out of the year, and so many months out of the year it's taken away. It's in the Museum of Man in London, and it's open to the public. If you wish to photograph it, I believe, at least last time in private, you want to photograph it, I think it was $175 for a half hour. I'm not sure. It might have gone up. Everything is inflation. It was $175 when I photographed it. So what I did was I cheated and went up and photographed it in the box that it was on display and said, the hell with it, I'm not going to pay that kind of money. Until someone told me you can't do that. So I said, fine. I said, I haven't taken any pictures yet. I lied a little. And we never lie, right? So, okay, we lied a little. The amethyst skull that you have in San Jose, California, is also from Guatemala. It is still in San Jose. It's on a $10,000 collateral and sits in a vault there. We'll try to show you that. The amethyst skulls in San Jose, Mexico, there are 6 that we know of, 4 that I worked with, and 1 that I shall be seeing pretty soon. They are all like twins. In other words, they are duplicates. They all are over 9 pounds. 1 is close to 11 pounds. And you will see them tonight, or a part of them. The rest you will see on Monday. The amethyst skull in Marin is a much smaller skull. It's the only small skull that we really know of. That's about 4 pounds. It was found in Mexico. From Mexico, it was brought up here. It was not carved in Mexico because it does not have the Mexican matrix. Actually, the matrix is Brazilian. The skull is roughly 13th, possibly late 12th century, somewhere in there. But that's also available. That's in a private collection, and I wouldn't tell you where it was anyway. The amethyst skull in Sedona. Isn't it funny we're getting into amethyst? And we haven't even got through of them. I'm not even going to tell you about a lot of them. The amethyst skull in Sedona is roughly 8.5 pounds. It is one of the most clearest and beautiful amethysts I've ever seen. It's in a private collection. I show some slides of it. That's my agreement. The rest of it, I can't tell you much about it. And it was stolen. So far, everything I'm talking about has been a stolen artifact. And we have a law, by the way. You know why people don't want you to know where? We have a law that says anything that you can't prove you had before 1969, the government takes. Yeah, they take it. They just go in your house, and they pick it up, and they take it. and the country that has, filed charges against you or whoever it is gets it back. It's automatic. It's an international law. Believe me, I watched a $55,000 collection of little ivory carvings that someone was mad at someone and called up them. They couldn't prove how long they had it. They took the entire collection. Entire collection. I knew they had it for years, but there was no record, there was no bill of fare, no way of proving it. And by the way, it was carved in Siberia. It was a Russian collection. Very interesting. The last few skulls that have come out were not rock crystal skull. We only have seen 16. They were either amethyst or clear quartz or frosted quartz. The last one that came out was serpentine, and it comes from Honduras. And they also found within the tomb, which they're digging now, they found a human skull, which was implanted with turquoise and seashells, which is commonly what you see in most of the world as you're traveling around. I've been in 110 countries. I've talked to a lot of juju, shaman, witch doctors, medicine women, and I'll tell you about them in a minute. And they all know about human skulls. They know very little about crystals or crystal skulls. We have the rose quartz skull, which is slightly larger than Mitchell Hedges skull, very translucent, has beautiful movable jaws, moves from Honduras through Guatemala into Lower Mexico by a secret society who still worship the skulls and who also belong to the Order of the Jaguar, which you may have heard of or not, and the Order of the Eagles. And I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. The Santa Monica skull is a clear skull. There are actually two in Santa Monica. One is only 3.5 pounds. The other one is a very large skull. Santa Monica skull supposedly comes from northern Guatemala and was recently stolen and only brought in here last year. It's a fantastic skull. I was put in a position where I took a couple of shots and then they told me to stop. So I wasn't able to get too much on that one, yet I worked with it. I have a lot of record on it. The skulls we're finding now are serpentine. Find a lot of serpentine skulls. Lots of human skulls are being dug up. And a lot of human skulls are being implanted with bones. I mean, the bones are being implanted with shells and rock. The rock that's mostly being used is serpentine, turquoise, what we think is some sort of azurite. And we don't know what the other stone is. It looks like granite, but it could be a term between granite, nephrite, and jadeite. We're not sure. The museum says it's granite. I don't believe them.
So, welcome back. I hope you got a lot from that, as I hope you got a lot from this. I feel it's going to be a really big release for a lot of people. For all the ingredients I said, right? And I don't want to talk too much because I've offered a lot, and I don't know how long this is. It might be quite long as it is, right? But I hope you appreciated what I combined in this. As I said, I was preparing more to release this in version part 4 of my releases, but because I lost the year, I brought it all forward a bit, and to bring in the discernment and the reference of the bigger scales of things, because I feel a lot of you might be really passionate about the crystal skulls if you're here, but you never heard that stuff. And as I said, like the wiping goes on and stuff like that. These things are still going on in our community and all that sort of stuff. So bringing a lot of concepts I've offered here, ideally it will be a catalyst for you to realize so much more that's going on, and the pattern recognition sort of stuff that I offered, okay? So I really hope this is a potent teaching on so many levels, and I hope you get a lot more from it. I hope the crystal skulls are a fascinating thing for you. I hope this is one of the most potent teachings you've ever come across, and I really thank you if you made it all the way through this and invested in your potential with me here now. But it's crazy times and so much going on, and perhaps we're still playing catch up, and everything's on the line, but life feels so rich. Everything means so much every moment. And this planet is so precious, and being on it is a privilege to be alive. And I feel very fortunate for that. And so I hope this helps make that journey on your life on this amazing planet much more richer. And you have the will to challenge everything you know and go into the unknown, and maybe go against everything that you've accepted and break yourself open to contemplating the whole new level, right? And I hope this has been a catalyst for that, and I hope you get a lot more from it. And all the stuff I've offered relative to me as well, it's interesting and it's exciting, and it's an option for you, right? So I thank you as always for being here. I thank you for all that you do that no one knows about, that you're in the trenches of. And I hope this is potent on a whole new level for you, right? So I thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as well. And until next time, guys, thanks so much for being here. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you as always. I hope you get a lot from this, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Lots of love, and Andre out.
The sun is gonna keep on shining right ahead on the horizon. My love for you always keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright tonight. Oh yeah, my love for you is gonna keep on rising. The sun's gonna keep on shining right next to the horizon. My love for you will keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright. The sun's gonna keep on shining right next to the horizon. My love for you will keep on rising. Everything's gonna be
We can remember swimming in December, heading for the city lights. 975, we sharing each other nearer than farther. Scent of lemon drips from your eyes.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.